everybody. Welcome back to the Journey podcast. I'm here with my good friend, Luvvie. Luvvie is an incredible person overall, just like one of the top in the world. I first got introduced to Luvvie because I was a follower of her blog. I don't know if she knows this. I read her blog religiously. And back in the day when Blavity had a conference called Empower Her, Luvvie was one of our speakers. And so I got to get a chance to know her there. And then over the years, we have seen each other at least like a couple of times a year at different conferences and different like Black Girl Magic retreats, etc. And she's one of the people that I call when I'm like, am I tripping or is the world tripping? I can't tell. So Luvvie, welcome to the podcast today. We're going to talk all things building a business that's built on your brand, building a business where you get paid to be yourself. She is probably one of the most prolific authors of our generation, 4 times New York Times bestselling author. Her launches are impeccable launches. I mean, we're going to get into how to launch effectively, how to compile a team, particularly around PR and speaking. She's on so many stages. She also just relaunched the newest season of her podcast. So I will be on her podcast soon. So you guys will definitely need to check out that episode. We'll give you a little preview of that later in this episode. And yeah, I'm really excited for her to be on the show today. Welcome, Luvvie. Hey everyone, I'm Morgan Debaun, a passionate entrepreneur and life advisor. With the Journey podcast, you'll discover that success isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. I'm sharing stories of amazing people who've taken control of their lives. Join me on my own journey to discover the secret sauce behind reaching success with permission from no one else. Okay, my friend. So first, let's start with how you got started. For those who aren't familiar with your journey, the beginnings of Luvvie, where would you say is like the first moment that you really started to put content out into the world?
Ooh, my first moment of putting content in the world was when I started my first blog, I would say, and that was 2003, so 21 years ago, which is wild. I was a freshman in college and my friends kind of peer pressured me into doing it. Isn't that old? Wow. I feel so old. Oh my God. 21 years ago.
I've been blogging more than I've been.
Over half my life, which is kind of wild. But yeah, I started blogging in college. It was peer pressure into doing it. And then I basically, one of my friends who used to read my blog in college was like, I think you have a lot of good stuff to say. So she gave me an advice column in the school paper. So she was the first Black editor-in-chief of the University of Illinois newspaper, the Daily Illini. And she gave me this column and I'd be walking on campus and people would be like, oh, I saw you in the back of the paper. That was such a good column. So that's kind of how I got started. But I didn't think that like writing was a thing. I actually thought it was just this cute hobby that I was doing because I'm very pragmatic. Like being a writer felt very much like, yeah, that's not even a possibility. So I didn't think about it as anything but me just doing this cute thing. When I graduated from college, I actually started awesomelyluvvie.com and I would go to work as a marketing coordinator 9 to 5 and then I'd come home and blog. And over the years, this thing that wasn't paying me was just consistently doing it. And I actually won my first award for it in 2009 and it was in the Black Web Blog Awards, which at that point was a big deal.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
And I won Best Humor Blog. It was such a big deal. And that's kind of how I was like, oh man, I guess more people are paying attention to this thing than I thought. I was like, oh, but I still did not say I'm going to quit my job and go become a writer and be Luvvie. I got laid off my marketing job April 2010. And honestly, that's the last real full-time job I had. Like it was like the universe and God pushed me to take the leap of faith that I was not going to take myself.
Yeah. So many entrepreneurs' journey starts with a layoff or getting fired from their job and then that being like a momentum to actually investing in themselves full time. I'm curious for you how you managed that transition given that it was unexpected, and what was the first like amount of money that you made? What was the first thing that someone paid you for?
So I did not manage the transition well because it's looking back in hindsight that I was like, oh, that was a leap of faith that I was supposed to take. But back then I saw it as, oh man, I gotta go find another job instantly. But while I looked for other jobs, I was helping other bloggers redesign their websites because I redesigned Awesomely Luvvie myself. I was helping other bloggers with like, how do you get more traffic? I started doing more consulting on the side, being like, well, this is temporary because as soon as I get a real job, I'll be able to stop doing this because I need to have money in some way. So, you know, I still found an application that I put in through LinkedIn in 2012. And that was 2 years later. So it was in the pause of I'm going to be looking for new jobs where I was like, okay, I mean, I guess I'm getting better and better at this thing. And I finally did get a new job. I finally did get hired to do social media full time for a global food brand. And this was 2012. Yeah, I got hired. I got a job. I was like, oh, snap. I'm back in there. I'm about to be a corporate girly again. And I went on the first day, and by noon, the walls were closing in on me. I was like, oh God, I don't think I can do this office thing anymore. So, like, at the end of the day, I scheduled an email to go out to them saying, thank you for the job. Yesterday was my first and last day. That's the point where I said, okay, you got to work for yourself because you can't do this no more.
That's so good. That's only ever happened to me once when someone worked one day, but they got fired. Actually, that's what happened. They didn't resign. I think I would be shocked if somebody like went through the interview process, got a job, started that day, and then quit the same day. That would be insane to me. What was the
like,
first
no,
thing
thank
someone
you.
paid you for?
Oh, first thing somebody paid me for. Okay, so fun fact. The job that laid me off hired me to do a Twitter workshop 2 months later at one of their conferences. So I think that was my first paid non-working for myself gig. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good flip. Okay, so your first set of revenue came from a speaking engagement, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating. All right. So as you were building your site and building your blog and building your voice, you were, again, one of the OG bloggers. Like before, I feel like blogging has gone up and down and come back again. A
Yeah.
lot of people aspire to get paid to be themselves and get paid to speak. But most people actually can't figure it out, like at all. So what advice would you give to someone who is just getting started and is trying to figure out how they can get paid to be themselves?
So my first piece of advice is for them to stop looking for all this strategy. Because I think what happens now is that people have high bullshit meters where they can tell when somebody is trying to work off a script or a formula. And the gift of being an OG is back then because we didn't have any ideas of what could actually happen for us. Like we didn't have any ideas of like, if we do these things, this other thing will happen. So we moved with authenticity and people really connected with it. Like my audience has been with me for 12 years, for 14 years, and we all grew up together. And they're like, we remember when you used to be on Blogger before you moved to WordPress. And the value of that is that community was like, yo, we see you, like you're saying what we were thinking, but we dared not to say, but it's real. So if somebody wants to start today in this social media world where so much is fake, so much is, curated, and so much is like, oh man, everything has to look amazing on the grid. People are actually rejecting that. People are rejecting what feels overly produced, what feels overly planned and strategized. So my best piece of advice is understand who you are and lean into that because there's somebody somewhere who's going to connect with it. What happens is we think we want to appeal to everybody, and then so we appeal to nobody. So figure out who you are and then go after people who are like you.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I've definitely struggled in the past with like, oh my gosh, I don't spend all this time like filtering my photos the same way for every single photo or like posting on a schedule. And it's like the moment I stop doing that, where I'm like, look, I'm going to batch my content that's informational. I'm going to do my stories in real time. Like, once I decided to say, I'm going to put some guardrails around me not overthinking this, it became 10 times easier to just exist.
Yep.
And I think that because people have made it a business to teach content creators how to be content creators, I think that's what's influenced folks to thinking that it needs to be harder than it is. I completely agree with you. I think if most people just showed what their life was and talked about whatever it is that they want to talk about, they'd actually get more engagement. And how do you navigate the fear of people and the backlash for saying something wrong? Because I also feel like we live in a world where there are consequences for speaking out too soon, or speaking out too early or saying something that's semi-controversial at the time. I mean, I think Palestine and the situation in Gaza is the one that is most clear to me. Like, I remember CEOs saying, hey, this is wrong, within 3 or 4 weeks of the massacre that happened in Israel by Hamas, which was incredibly terrifying. But they were also like, that doesn't mean that you should go and kill all the Palestinians in the entire area. And they lost their job. Like, their jobs are still gone. Those CEOs were fired and investors did not invest in them, Now everybody's like, hey, you're taking it too far. But it's like, at what point was it socially acceptable to say this is too far? That's the part that gets me every single time.
So I'm so glad you brought that up. So like the Palestine, the Israel conflict, genocide, all of that is the moment where we've all been practicing for. Let me tell you why. That is a high stakes situation, like super high stakes. So when we talk about the fear of speaking out and people are like, I'm afraid of what I'm going to lose, this is the moment that actually applies. Because yes, people are losing jobs, livelihoods, and speaking engagements. People are losing brand partnerships because they dare say this is not okay, right?
I'm sure I'll lose money just for bringing this up on the podcast.
Listen, you probably will, because let me tell you something right now. I know I've lost speaking engagements this year because I've been very much saying, like, I don't think it's ever okay for kids to die. So this is the moment that is high stakes, that yes, there is a lot on the line. Honestly, it is that thing. Now, the problem is everybody attaches this high stakes to every situation, and that does not apply. So let me repeat that again. In real high stakes situation, like where we're at right now, yes, I understand people being shy to speak up, people being like, I got to protect my family, I got to protect my livelihood, so I'm gonna be quiet. You know what? I can't even judge you. It is definitely showing in how people are being doxxed, people are being censored. Yes. But you sitting in a random meeting, innocuous meeting, being afraid to speak up about the campaign that's trash, that's not high stakes. Because in that moment, if you're the vice president of the company, you're the president of the company, you're the CEO, or you're the head of the department, or you called the meeting, how is that high stakes? You're not going to lose your job because you say, hey, let's rethink this idea, right? So what happens is we attach the apocalypse scenario moments to moments that are super tedious. And then we don't say anything about anything, right? So we go, oh my gosh, I'm afraid to speak up. No. Really, I want you to really think about, is this situation actually high stakes? And why are you leaving your voice behind when you really won't lose anything? Everything is not what's happening in the Middle East. Every situation where we're asked to use our courage is not that. Some situations, you have nothing to lose but the harmony in the room for 10 seconds.
Yeah, I agree. I think that people are operating in fear, walking on eggshells, and they are miscalculating the heaviness of that decision because everything feels heavy. So they just attribute the heaviness to every single decision. And so they're misweighing the opportunity to just say what you want, say what you feel, say how you think. It's probably not going to be that bad of an outcome. Now, again, to your point, like the genocide is absolutely one of those things that is there are consequences for speaking up and saying what you believe.
Yes.
To your point, corporate warriors, saying that you guys shouldn't say this in a campaign or an advertising campaign is probably not the place. And maybe you do get blackballed, I don't know, in the corporate room. And not to minimize that if that's like super important to you, but like I think that for content creators, people who aren't in corporate situations, like to not speak up when they feel something. And maybe, the situation in Gaza isn't what you're passionate about. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, gun laws. Maybe it's something else. And I guess I'm curious, like for people who are on that fence of, I feel like I need to say something because I actually have something to say, but I don't know how to say it and not get the consequence. How would you encourage them to either A, just say like, who cares about the consequence, just accept it, or B, work through that fear?
I mean, I think it's important to quantify your decisions too. So in the moments when you're like, I do want to say something, but I'm afraid, I actually have a truth telling guide that I've created that I'm like, quantify your truth telling. We make decisions all the time that sometimes in the moment, you might have decision fatigue of should I speak, should I not? So I actually have it. It's a free guide. It's bethedomino.com, the truth telling guide. Download that. But Cliff Notes, ask yourself 3 questions. Do I mean it? Can I defend it? Can I say it thoughtfully? Usually if the answer is yes to all 3, I say the thing because I'm supposed to say the thing, right? I've done my checklist. I'm not being impulsive because in telling the truth, especially in uncomfortable moments, you want to check yourself that your motive is good, right? And knowing that how you deliver the message matters, but it does not guarantee that even if you are your most thoughtful self, everybody's going to love what you say. You have to be okay with not being constantly agreed with. If your goal is for everybody to agree with you at all times, you will say nothing of note. You would just be like a beige version of a human being. Fluorescent beige is what they're calling it. Like, just understand that in the process of speaking up, or just even honestly, just being authentically who you are, you will
Yeah.
repel people. The very act of embodying who you are will automatically repel certain people, and you have to be okay with it, because those are not the people for you anyway, and no matter what you do, they still won't like you. So instead of you bending yourself
Mhm.
backwards and quieting yourself and regretting not speaking up, honestly, say the things that you mean in the most thoughtful way that you know how, and then deal with what happens. I mean, I'm saying this as somebody who was trended on Twitter before, okay? Like, so I'm not saying this because I'm just like, go for it. Everything will always go well. It won't. It won't.
No.
Sometimes it won't go well at all. But what do? You learn, and then you do better, and then you grow and you gather data. But I think people are so afraid of ruffling feathers and consequences that are phantom, that are not even that likely, that we'll talk ourselves out of the things that make the most sense and the most impact.
Yeah, sometimes the obvious answer is the simple answer, and there's consequences either way. So you should at least pick the consequence that feels the best to you and the truest to you. That's kind of
Yep.
how my own internal barometer. It's like, look, there's consequences either way. Either you're sacrificing yourself or you're like bending to something else. Like, so I'm going to pick myself every single time and just accept whatever the consequence is. And that could be good or bad. One thing that I've been doing lately, I have he's not even a little baby anymore. I mean, he's 7 months old, and I don't show his face on the internet, and there's a lot of people who have family bloggers, and I show a lot of my life, particularly my business life. And this transition obviously is a big transition for me personally. But I've also said, for me, I'm not judging other people, but for me, he is
Right.
not
Right.
going to be a part of how I operate in the public sphere. And I've had people DM me and be like, I think that you should show more of your mom life, or I think you should show more of like this and that. I'm like, you know what? That's actually not what I'm going to do, because that's not, yes, I am his mom. Yes. But like part of that is protecting him. And also, I am also more than that. So I don't want to get in a situation where I'm just like reviewing diapers on the internet when it's like, that's actually not my ministry. Like, that's not who I mean, like every time you become something else doesn't mean you have to make that your whole identity either,
That part, that
So,
part, that part. When I
but
got
that's what's
married,
true
so
for
when
me.
I feel you, because literally, like, I've been a public blogger or speaker and writer for a long time. The one part of me that I don't
Mhm.
make like public fodder is my relationship, my marriage. So even when I got
Right.
engaged and I posted on social media, because I was like, the ring is going to be obvious, I didn't even show half his face. I only showed half his face. And then not just that, at that point, I had hit the New York Times bestselling list once before. I had done all these other
Yes.
things. Nothing I had ever posted got as much engagement and love as much as me saying I got
As getting
engaged.
engaged.
I got
That's wild.
8,800 comments.
That's insane.
8,800.
I hate
I
that.
have done, I hate that for us, because I'm like, wait a minute, I've done 18,000 things. And because I'm wearing a ring now, all of a sudden y'all are impressed. And it was fascinating because I was like, this is
Yes.
how people get addicted to this particular type of validation, because it is
Mhm.
a massive, like, it is like Pavlov's conditioning. 8,800 comments. Oh, well, shoot. From that point on, I could be posting him every other day, and my engagement levels will be
Yeah.
sky high
We
at
go
all times.
crazy. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, because that is a sacred space for me that I don't think requires public
Yeah.
fodder and likes, right? So then when we got married, like, I posted it the day after we got married, and that's probably the
Yeah.
first time he was on my timeline. Another
Yeah.
55,000 likes and
Jeez.
thousands of comments. And I'm just like, wow. Meanwhile, I can post today that I invented the cure to cancer, and it will have
They'd be
3,000
like,
likes and 4 comments.
yeah. It's so true. That's actually the same thing that happened to me when I posted, I think, Josh's like face for the first time, or even he like did this beautiful bouquet of roses for our 1 year of meeting each other. And I posted that. I think that's the most comments and most likes I've ever gotten. And I think the reason why people are so happy for us is because there's a lot of Black women that are high achieving, and just women that are high achieving, who are ambitious, who have dedicated a lot of their time and energy to their career and being amazing at putting things back out into the world and being a creator or being a business person or being, whatever it may be, and have not necessarily gotten to the place yet where they have been able to find their person and live out loud. And so I think
Yeah.
that's why it gets so much love. That's what I'm telling myself. Is that it's because they see hope in us. That's what I'm
Yes.
telling
I
myself. Because the alternative,
That's some
which
of
was
it.
that we could just,
That's
I
some
don't
of
know,
it. It's
Levy.
some of it. But even the white people, when they post about their husbands and it likes on top of likes, the babies,
True.
likes on top of likes. It's just like a constant thing. And I think there's just this
True.
part of course, people love love. So I appreciate that piece. But it's so interesting about the things that we validate, right? So then what are we saying to the people who are single, who don't have a partner,
Yeah.
who are still thrilled about life, whose lives are full, who can never get that much
Mhm.
engagement simply because they've never
Like,
posted a partner and a baby. And it's kind of wild. And I'm like, let's share on our small and our big wins. And every big win is not about love. You know what I mean? So
I
I'm
agree.
just like, it's fascinating. It is fascinating. It is like, I'm intrigued by it. But again, to your point, my personal life is not a part of my brand or my public facing work, nor does it need to be. Some
Mhm.
people, that's a part of their no judgment. Y'all do you.
It's fine.
But I don't think that is something that I want to perform for people. So I just leave that to myself. So I'm like, y'all can have a lot of other things. You can't have that.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it's important if your career is going to be one that requires, at least for me to make the commitment to myself of like, okay, being an entrepreneur is one thing, but being an entrepreneur who's building in public, who's talking about
Mhm.
my business failures or talking about the things that are going well, who are
Correct.
bringing people along the journey, then I need to have a safe space in my home that is not for discussion. Actually, let me tell you this one thing
Correct.
that's been happening recently. I would love your opinion, mostly so that I can feel affirmed, TBH. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I
Yeah.
moved from LA to Nashville because my parents live here and I wanted to be in a more grounded day-to-day life for myself. I spent all my 20s building Blabby. You know, I busted my butt. Like I've
You
worked in
did.
the office. I've lived in the office. I worked really, really hard. And I felt like I could have continued on that trajectory, but I would have always been in a culture of more, where it's like,
Yep.
more press,
Yep.
more screenings, walk the red carpet, who's the stylist, what the
Mhm.
Getty image,
Yeah.
the life that we could be living if we lived in New York or LA.
Correct.
It's nonstop.
Correct.
Lovey does not live in New York and LA, you guys. She lives in Chicago.
Correct.
So, we're like minded in this. But anyway, so I moved to a city where my parents live because I also was single. So I was living in a season of singleness and wanted to be in a place where I could still feel grounded and be connected to my family if I wound up in a situation where I was single for a prolonged period of time. Since moving to Nashville, there's this thing that's been happening where the people who live in Nashville, who are typically Nashville natives, feel very entitled to me because I live here. And I'm like, wait a minute. I did not move here to work. I moved here actually as my retreat. I moved here as my grounding so that I could walk down the street and go get a coffee and like for my anonymity to some extent. If I moved to
Yeah.
the opposite of moving to Nashville would have been like moving to Atlanta, or like there's no way I would be able to go to lunch without somebody being like, "Hi, I'm so and so and I'm so and so and I want to do so and so and
Mhm.
can we connect about so and so?" And I'm like, "I'm just trying to eat my waffle." Just trying to eat my waffle,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
And I think that what's been hard for me is navigating the sense of entitlements where people are like, oh, you didn't go speak at my, Boys and Girls Club of Middle Tennessee. This is not a real example, so don't go after the person for Boys and Girls Club of Middle Tennessee. But you didn't speak for my 5-person event in Middle Tennessee and you moved here and you're not pouring into the community. I'm like, what are you talking about? How do you deal with the entitlements that come with being a public figure in our community? And like, how do you manage the enough of your giving back into our
Yes.
community?
Oh, okay. So yes, the point you made about us not living in the hubs is really important because people think I live in New York or LA. Like anytime I'm somewhere and I'm like, oh, I'm going home tomorrow. And they're like, home? I thought you live here. I'm like, bruh, no. I live in Chicago. I love living in Chicago. I'm a Chicago girl, been that, gonna stay that. It's my grounding and it's my charging station. And when people know I'm in Chicago, yeah, like I get asked to like speak here. And I am in a moment of burnout recovery. So my boundaries currently
Mm-hmm.
are really strong, where I'm literally saying
Mm-hmm.
mostly no's because I give back in
Mm-hmm.
so many ways that I'm like, I don't feel entitled to have to do this right now. there will come a point where I get back to being like, all right, cool. Now I can donate 10 hours a quarter to speaking at, nonprofits or at schools and all of that stuff. But right now I'm not in that place because I got to get my brain back and my spirit back. I got to get my nervous system back to reset. So in this moment, it's a whole no. Now, being in Chicago, here's the other thing too. When I'm home, I'm home. Like, I am a couch potato. My friends already know. Let's get up, pull up at any point. The door is open, pull up at any point. We gonna key at the kitchen counter and on the couch until 2 a.m.
That's right.
That is my jam. And Nashville specifically, so I actually have to come to Nashville at the end of the summer because this bestseller author meetup is there. Nashville is the hub to a lot of rich thought leaders, really rich thought leaders. Like, you're literally in the
White
headquarters.
thought leaders, but yes.
White thought leaders. Right. I'm gonna work on more of us. God bless. But
I know.
It's such a hub for that. And people are moving to Nashville for that. Meanwhile, you're like, I moved to Nashville for peace, which I love. Okay. And I don't think you need to feel obligated to fulfill anything but what your own mission is, which is the peace of it all. And getting away from the hub and the running around and the constantly going to events. When I go to New York, I'm always exhausted when I come back. I'm like, golly, that was only for 2 days.
You're so much.
It's too much. They're going to 5 events a day. I'm like, oh my God.
It's fine. It's good to have the balance.
I can't. I was supposed to be at the White House. I said no.
Oh no. I love the White House. White House be like, can you come tomorrow to the state dinner? I'm like, no. No. I cannot.
No, I ain't gonna be able to make it.
It's a privilege to say no. It's a privilege to say no, but the answer is still
say no. But I think about it like this. There comes a point where in our careers, after you've built for 10 years, like y'all, me and Morgan been at our things for 10 years plus, right? After you've done all that, after you run around, you've gone to all the fancy events, you have hobnobbed in the south of France. There comes a point when, again, it sounds like a champagne problem, but it's a problem nonetheless. After you've been averaging 100,000 miles a year traveling, there comes a point where your body goes, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I don't even have it to do anymore, because you come back home and it takes you 4 days to recover because you're just like, I'm spent. And that actually is a thing that people don't talk about enough, because it sounds like, oh, you're just being fancy. No, like, your body will break down after a point, because it's like, I've done this for so long. I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. And I can't be a high performer. Like, to me, that's the other thing. There's no way I could be a high performer as a public figure if I'm going to go and do a speaking engagement where someone's paying me a ton of money to be there, to pour into this crowd, into this audience. I'm going to be 100% present when I'm there. To be 100% present means shaking every single hand. It means saying hello to every single person. It's doing the meet and greet, the post meet, the dinner, the pre-dinner, the post-dinner, the random photo, the random thing, right? Yep. It's doing every single thing that I'm asked, because that's actually what you're getting when you say, hey, Morgan, can you fly into the city and do this thing? Cool. And I say, yes, then I'm going to go 100% there. The result then is I'm not at 100% as the CEO and the operator of my business. And then I'm also not 100% at being me, which means I'm not necessarily doing my exercises. I'm not necessarily drinking and hydrating the whole time. Like, there are things that are trade-offs, right? So if you do that back to back to back, you're going to wind up with a deficit in the other parts of your life. And what I said for myself, and I'm encouraging you all as you're listening to this, you got to figure out, are you okay actually being a deficit in those areas? And in certain seasons of my life, and particularly the season I'm in now, I'm actually not. I'm not okay being a deficit in my health. I'm not okay being a deficit in my relationship. I'm not okay being a deficit as a parent. Not right now. No.
Not right now.
And so
not right now.
I think what I've had to work through mentally is that I'm going to wind up pissing off a lot of people, because my no and my boundary is one in which people feel offended that they don't have access to me. And I think that's what's been weird. I'm like, oh my God, the offense that people are taking by the no is part of the thing that I've really had to work on recently.
You know what? It's just important for us to release people's expectations of us, because people are going to be disappointed. The more no's you say, the more people you're letting down on paper, right? But honestly, those expectations of them that they have of you is not your real business. Like, for me, I'm always like, what do I truly feel like doing? And if somebody's expectations meet what I feel like doing and they're parallel, awesome. But if they don't, at this point, I'm like, they ain't got nothing to do with me.
Yeah. That's right. Part of this podcast and the show even be calling The Journey is because I like to share with people in real time the things that I'm dealing with and the things that the people who are coming on this show, like you are, like I said, one of the most prolific authors of our generation. And Luvvie and I are having this real time conversation. I want you all to really genuinely hear us. Like we are all a work in progress and we are all constantly evolving. Even this show, I asked Luvvie to be on the show like maybe 9 months ago and she said, nope, not right now. I'll come back to it when I'm ready. And I said, okay, that's fine. I didn't take a personal offense to it. I'm like, all right, cool.
And then I
That's
hit her
not a
up and
me
I was like, I'm
thing.
ready
That's a her
now.
thing. So
Like,
when she's ready, she's going to let me know. And here we are.
and I did.
Right. So I think I'm going to move on to the next topic because, I could just go on and on. But I hope that this little tangent was helpful for anyone who's listening in, and make sure you guys let us know if it was helpful. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about being a author.
Yes.
I mean, you've got 4 best-selling books. Are you going to keep going? Like, is this like you're going to keep writing a book every 3 years, or what do you go after 4?
Morgan, I am officially a career author. I'm going to be writing books until I don't have any books left to write. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild?
That's wild to
Me
me.
from 10 years ago? That is wild. Me from 10 years ago is shooketh right now. It's like, what? Like, I already have a deal for my next 2 books. So my next 2 books are the continuation. Yes. Like Little Troublemaker Makes a Mess, my first kids book, which I've had a dream about for years.
Yep.
It came out in 2023 and it killed. It did so well. Like they gave me a 2-book deal for books 2 and 3. Like parents are still hitting me up about Little Troublemaker Makes a Mess. And my agent hit me up and said, I just wanted to let you know that it is incredibly rare for people to get multiple book deals for kids' books. So
I believe that.
I'm a career author. So I'm going to have a book coming out in 2025, 2026. I might have 2 books coming out in 2026 because my next big book is probably going to come out in 2026 in fall. So yeah.
Wow.
7.
A career author. What an amazing accomplishment. I think, your book actually, I bought a bunch of your books and we give them out at the Children's Hospital here at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital at the Saturday sickle cell disease clinic. And I think once a month, my dad sends me a picture of like the kids that got the book that day. And like their smile is just the biggest smile. It's so sweet.
Send me those pictures, Morgan. Send me those pictures. I love
I will.
those.
They're just so cute. I'm like, look at this little girl. It's so good. I think the reason your book sells well is because the millennial moms know who you are. So when they get the book and then they see who's the author and then they see it's you, like it just kind of is this really cute moment.
That is the first reason why people pick it up. And then I get emails from parents who are like, I am sick of you. I said, why? They're like, my kid has made me read this book 30 days in a row. And is like, can we read Troublemaker today? I said, I don't know what to tell you. Like, they're obsessed with it. So like when I announced books 2 and 3, one of my friends commented and was like, good. So I can stop reading this one book because I'm sick of it. I was like, I don't know. I was like, my bad. The next one is even better than the first book. That's the thing. So I
think you're just affirming these kids. I think you're affirming the kids. Like actually when I gave the book to one family and the mother was like, I don't know that I want to affirm my kid making a mess and like doing all these things. And I don't know if this is like the right. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. But that's actually what the kids needed to hear, which is why the kids like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually think adults need to hear it because honestly, like, how often did we make a mess when we were little and then we beat ourselves up for it? Like we become the adults who are obsessed with being like with perfectionists in general. Yeah. And it's because when we were little, we made a mess. We got in deep, deep trouble for it. Like we end up becoming the adults who now can't tolerate mess because we got punished anytime we even made an accidental mess. So my hope is that honestly, I'm using the books to actually reparent myself. To be quite honest, I'm really writing the books for me. Because I want this little girl to hear what I did not hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's real. That's so real. Okay, so you're a career author now. I'm so excited for you. So do you have like an editing team? What does it look like? Or what infrastructure are you thinking about putting together in this new season as someone who's going to be publishing and releasing now for the rest of your life?
So, okay, number 1. So my first book got rejected by 11 editors. And I'm judging you got 1 yes. And I knew my point was to like kill it. So I never have to go through that rejection again. And that somebody else who looks like me won't have to. So when Professional Troublemaker went out and editors wanted it, 12 editors wanted it. It went through 4 rounds of auction. And then when it went down to the final round, I was left with 3 editors to pick from they had put similar offers on the table. It was a big auction. And why I picked the editor that I picked, Meg Leader, who's amazing. Meg wrote me this beautiful letter that I just found the other day. And in it, Meg said, I want Penguin Random House to be your publishing home. And I remember reading that and being like, oh, that is
That's
like
so sweet.
the dream. That basically means we want to be champions of your work and your words, even beyond this book. And honestly, Penguin has become my publishing home. So yeah, as a career author, one of the most important things is to have an editor who just deeply believes in your work. So for me, if I have any book idea, the first person I'm running it by is Meg. And I want Meg to have the first right of refusal. If Meg is like, I don't love this other book, I don't think I want to publish it, cool, then I'll take it out and take it to somebody else. But knowing that I have a place where I can go as like my first point is really empowering. And then secondary, a writing discipline. As a career author, you need a writing discipline. As an author in general, as a writer, as anybody, you need, because here's the thing is creativity is not what writes books. Everyone thinks you got to be creative to write a book. Some of the most creative people have never written a book. Almost like a PhD. It's not about being the smartest person, right? It's about the person having the most resilience to finish the project. So whenever I have a book idea, I have to be really passionate about it, because what's going to make me finish this project? It's going to have to be the fact that I'm like, I want to get this message out. So yeah, that's important.
Yeah, I'm in the middle. I just got all my copy edits back from my manuscript, like the final copy edits. And I opened that Word doc, Levy, and I almost started crying. I was like, this is insane. I'm like, you think I can get through this in 2 weeks? This is an insane amount of edits. And
let me make you feel better, Morgan. When I opened my first draft, after my editor sent it back to me, there were 7,000 tracked edits.
Yeah. Wait, let me look and see. Hold on. I have it open right now. Insertions, 2,300. Deletions, 2,400. 255 revisions on formatting, 395 comments, a total of 5,406 revisions.
You're doing great. You're right on spot. You're doing great.
I called my agent and I said, Eve, is this normal? I'm having so much, I'm stressed right now. And very few things actually stressed me. Like, I am pretty unmovable. I was like, this is a lot. She's like, no, I should have warned you. This is overwhelming for first-time authors.
This is normal.
Go through it. Yeah, just go through it.
I just have so much advice to you, though. Let me tell you what will make this go easier. So run through the easy edits first. So if you see an edit that you're like, I don't have time for that, skip it. Run through all the easy edits. So the commas, the deleting a sentence here, run through that first. That'll probably take care of like 1,500 edits. Boom. We're going to take the quick win. And then you go through the harder ones. Like, do the harder ones last. Do all the easy ones first, because you will feel better, because you'll see the number reducing, right? But don't worry. Here's the most satisfying part. When you end up with 10 edits left, girl, let me tell you, you will celebrate. So celebrate the whole thing.
Like
celebrate the whole thing.
Look, celebrate. Yeah, that feels like a light year away. Well, actually, I will absolutely celebrate when this is the last. Like, this is the copy edit. Like, this thing is locked, So I am really proud of myself for going through this process. It's taken much longer than I thought. But I think the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've already been asked a couple of times, like, what's your second book going to be? And the idea of like starting this process over, I have an outline for actually 2 different book options and concepts. But the idea of going through the actual like writing, publishing process again is one that feels so daunting. And I realize that this is your full-time job, so I can't compare my thing that I'm doing on the side with my full-time job as CEO with your full-time commitment to yourself as a career author. And yet I still am curious, what kind of like habits do you have as someone who is making that route? Like, what is your author discipline routines that you have in place?
So let the record show I'm a career author, but it's not my full-time job, because I'm still a speaker.
Ooh.
I'm still, right? Like, I'm still CEO of All Love Media, and I just founded the Book Academy. So writing is in the midst of all of that. When I am in book writing mode is different from when I am not. So when I'm in book writing mode, what that looks like is I put a 2-hour block on my calendar every day. 2-hour block.
Wow.
And for those 2 hours, I turn off everything. I put my phone on silent. I X out on all apps besides my writing app, which is Scrivener. And then I sit there and it's just me and the computer. And I just got to sit there staring at it. And then if I start getting distracted, I also use this app called Self-Control that if I try to go to Gmail, Threads, Facebook, YouTube, it blocks me from it. It puts a 404 error, like you can't do it. So for those 2 hours, it
Really?
just got to be me and the words. Yes. And that's literally how I've
Oh
written
my
my
gosh, I
books.
need that
The
app.
Self-Control app is free. It's amazing. It
Is
is
it a
so
plugin
good.
or like a desktop
Yeah,
app?
it's a desktop app, and you tell it how long you want it to have self-control for you, and you can even restart your computer, and self-control app will be like, what I got to do with me? You still can't go to YouTube. You still can't go on Facebook. It's amazing. So I literally force myself to sit there with a blank screen, and then I'm like, well, I guess I better write now. I ain't got nothing else to do. So that's how I write my books, 2 hours every day.
See, my toxic trait is I would open up another laptop.
You would open
So
another
good.
laptop? Listen, you gotta put it on all your computers now. And you can put it on your phone too. You'd be like, no, shut it down. Shut it down. It's you and the computer, and that's it. You and the words, okay? And literally when people are like, how do you write books? Brute force. Brute force
Wow.
is how I write books. Yeah. And for me, I find that if I don't get the words on paper, I don't sleep well.
Right.
I feel guilty
Yeah,
because it's an
totally.
assignment that's undone. Yeah.
Wow. So interesting. By the way, you guys, I had a chance to be on Luvvie's podcast, The Professional Troublemaker, and I want to make sure that you all get a sneak peek of our conversation. So we're going to play that right now.
I don't believe in solopreneurs. No shade to anybody who's a solopreneur. Here's why I'm always like, yikes. And I officially run if somebody's a solopreneur and they say, I am a team of one. I will run. I will not hire them anymore. It's not about how good you are at your work. It's not about how passionate you are at your work. If you are a team of one, everything lives or dies with you, which means you go on vacation, you get sick, you decide to have one day where you just don't feel like doing nothing and everything falls apart. If there is not one more person in your business, even if it's a part-time virtual assistant, that even matters. If you are a person of one, it is so risky to the point where I, as the person who is engaging you and wanting to give you money, I'd be nervous just because I've also experienced what happens when solopreneurs literally lives and they go, yeah, I couldn't pay the bills. Excuse me?
If you're going to be a team of one, then you need to maximize you. You need to be the best employee you can be. And that means buying back your time. That means being like unapologetic about your boundaries so that you spend more time working on your business, not just working in your business. And that may mean you need to hire contractors and hire help so that you have more time. I would try to remind people oftentimes, like, you are the biggest rainmaker for your business. Luvvie, you probably are the person driving the most business for your business. And so you have to protect your rainmaker. You have to
Guaranteed.
Yeah. It's not your agents. It's not all these other people. Like, it's you. You're driving the business. So why are we spending time as the main person, the main rainmaker, doing all this other stuff like folding laundry? Like, think about how much time we spend doing things we shouldn't be doing as entrepreneurs. And you're actually the biggest money maker for your company and for your business. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice for folks who are like just getting started or considering entrepreneurship is consider how you can buy back your time so you can spend more time working on your business and be a rainmaker for your company. So hopefully you guys loved that little clip. I hope you guys actually listened to that episode and subscribe to both of our podcasts. There's very few Black girls out here doing it like us, and we are just I love that we did this little swap. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that clip and go and listen to Luvvie's podcast as well. But I also want to ask her about a recent thing, a new business that she launched. Probably, I think I saw it first time last year, which is helping people like myself become authors and get their ideas on paper. What made you decide to create your new academy?
Okay, so I love to teach what I know, but beyond that, I'm also a branding geek. The thing about books and the things that I've been able to do with my books, it actually transcends gender and race and background, because being a 4-time New York Times bestseller, and all 4 are in different categories and across age groups, I was like, I've done something that a lot of people have not done. And I want to make sure that publishing, which is typically locking anybody who's not a white man out, I want to make sure we get in the mix because, like you, Morgan, like you have a lot of expertise, you have a lot of lessons, but it's so interesting how few business books are written by Black women. So few,
Very
so
few.
few that show thought leadership. Publishing loves to give us deals about racism, for us to write about the
Yeah.
burden of Blackness in America.
Slavery.
But I'm like,
Yeah.
right, slavery. I'm like, where are the books that we've written about expertise, about joy, about business? So my whole
Mm-hmm.
thing is I am on a mission to help more people who are not white men become not just published authors, but like people actually read your books. Like 95% of books sell less than 5,000 copies.
Ouch.
So yeah, it's bad out here. So I'm like, I can teach people how to do this and do this well. So, that's why I created the Book Academy last year. And I've had over 400 students. And my whole goal is to remove all the mystery around publishing, give you the cheat codes on how to actually get a book deal or self-publish well. And then when this book
Mm-hmm.
comes out, sell more than 5,000 copies. So yeah, that's why the
Right.
Book Academy exists. And if anybody wants to write a book, check out thebookacademy.com. But like Morgan is one of my clients, shout out, because we're going to get Morgan's book out here in these streets. I'm excited for it though.
Literally, I called Luvvie. I was like, which cover should I do? And then I said, but pause, I will pay you for your advice. So send me the
Period.
link. Because I do fundamentally
Period.
believe in paying your friends. And that is something that I hope and wish if we have one takeaway from this conversation, hopefully you have multiple takeaways from this conversation today in this episode, but pay your friends or do some sort of exchange. It's just a sign of respect. And
Yeah,
it's something that goes a really long way. So
I
I
agree.
was like, Luvvie, send me the link. I need 30 minutes of your time because I also need you locked in for these 30 minutes. Tell me what to do. I don't like this. How do I phrase this email? How do I phrase this back to my publisher? Like, at one point, I felt like they were trying to girl boss me too much and put me in the like general girl category. And I was like, and not for girls. Like, this is for people who are ambitious and they can be men. And I just
Yes.
don't want to be pink,
Yes.
And, I like, I needed backup. And so Luvvie is who I called for backup. And it was just so helpful versus me just sitting in my brain, talking to myself and not knowing how to articulate what I was trying to say in the way that a publisher could hear me. Very
Yeah, and
helpful.
I'll tell you, like, there's so much information out there that you can Google, yes, but all of it is overwhelming. And what I'm finding now is for us, the lack of cultural EQ also in publishing sets us up for failure. You know what I mean? So I'm always like, bruh,
Can be challenging.
here's the thing. Selfishly, I need our books to sell better because for every book by
Yeah.
somebody who's on the margins that does not do well, that means somebody else's book deal will be harder to get because they're somehow comparing your book to theirs. So please, collectively, can we all do better so we can all get the good checks? Not just me getting a good check as an author, but I want everybody who is smart, who is on any margin to be able to become an author also.
100%. I
So yeah.
agree. So you all make sure you check out Luvvie's Book Academy. And if you do actually check it out, please let her know that you came from the journey and from the Work Smart community so that, maybe Luvvie will come back on our podcast.
Period.
We'll talk about other things.
Okay, I'm excited. Look, this is dope. I'm
All
proud
right,
of you,
y'all.
Morgan.
Well,
I'm proud of
hopefully,
you.
thank you. I'm excited. It's a whole journey. I pushed back the date of release to next spring. So we've got a long way to go, but I'm still excited. And I think that the book that I wrote hopefully will be very actionable and helpful for people as they're navigating how to rewrite their own rules for life and not just do what the status quo is telling them to do and not just wait their turn and follow the milestones, married by 30, house by whatever, like just do what you're going to do and then do it really well. That's what the book is designed to help people with. So,
Yes.
all right, y'all. Hopefully this episode was helpful for you. If it was, I need you to do me a favor. You all did this actually really well with Robbie Baxter's show that we did a few weeks back on building a subscriber and membership community. I want you to leave me a review with one of your takeaways from this episode. I read every single review. I love getting them. They bring me so much joy. This is a free show that we keep free. We are now ad supported, which you guys have probably noticed. So make sure that you're also checking out the sponsors. So shout out to our